Welcome to the Runway, where we cover current events in crypto, Web3, and tech. It's Friday, May 17th. Let's take off. Hey, what's going on, guys? Sorry, I've been gone for a while. I was at my bachelor party for a couple weeks. We took a trip around the U.S., went to Vegas, had fun in Arizona, and just kind of traveled all over. Messed around on the Amtrak train, did a lot of hiking, saw the Grand Canyon, did all sorts of fun, awesome, cool stuff. Also been traveling. We went to the Bitcoin Miami conference. If you haven't gotten a chance, take a look at the little sit-down fireside chat I did with Robert Breedlove. I think we talked about some really cool stuff, and there were some really interesting monetary things we talked about when it came to Bitcoin and sort of the history of money and monetary characteristics and how money sort of emerges in different video games. Very interesting piece there. Kind of talked a little bit about Lynn Alden's book, Broken Money, I believe is what it's called, where she kind of talks about all of this stuff. I'm reading it right now, but let's see here. Yes, Broken Money, that is what the book is called. I've been listening to the audio version of it, and it's really touches on some really interesting and great research and insights, and stands on the back of giants of tons of people in the industry who have provided tons of insight and done a lot of research when it comes to the history of money, cryptocurrency, blockchains, all those types of things. With that being said, next week, my plan is to return to a more consistent recording schedule for these sort of macro, big picture takes about the Web3 crypto Bitcoin landscape. So with that being said, let's kick off and dive in here. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened over the past couple weeks. One of the big things here is the Senate repealing the SEC crypto rule. Biden's veto poses next challenge. So basically the House of Representatives, they passed this repeal of SAB 121. You might ask, what is SAB 121? Well, SAB 121 is a regulation or essentially kind of like a law that the SEC put in place without any comment period, in total violation of what they're supposed to do. It's an authoritarian overreach, and basically what it attempts to do is prevent traditional institutions from participating in Bitcoin custody, sophisticated institutions, right? So when you want to protect investor, usually you want custodians who are regulated and who there's oversight when they are holding other people's money, which is kind of funny because here we have the SEC actually saying that those people that are actually qualified can't participate in this, can't help custody these assets for people that might want them to be custodied, right? So instead, we have this shadow custody industry where the regulated actual players can't participate, which you'd think they'd want, if they really cared about protecting people, they'd want to have oversight over that. They'd want banks and institutions that have a history of custodying these assets to be able to custody them and be able to participate in that activity, right? To be able to offer that to customers for more safety. But instead of protecting the public, we have the SEC doing the exact opposite, right? Limiting opportunities for people, preventing common sense things. And this is SAB 121 was just another example of the authoritarian overreach of the likes of Gary Gensler and the SEC. Now, Cynthia Lummis has talked a lot about this. She goes into detail about the consumer risks that are caused by SAB 121. It's just a common sense thing, right? So there was pretty much all the Republicans went along with overturning this, and we did have it was nice to see some crossover from the Democratic side of the aisle here. Once it passed the House, it went to the Senate, and the Senate now has also repealed this rule. They've agreed, and there was a bipartisan support there, right? So I think that is also nice to see. You had I think 10 to 12 Democrats joining the Republicans to pass this, which was very nice to see. The other thing here that was very strange is that the White House put out a press release. Probably, I think it was. You really can't make this stuff up. It was the same day that Donald Trump was having his Web3 NFT collection visit at Mar-a-Lago for all the people who bought his NFTs. It was a sort of like a party and meet and greet type situation for the industry for people who owned his NFT collection. At the same time, the same day, you've got the Biden administration putting out this thing basically saying that this announcement that they are going to not they're going to veto if the House and the Senate send this to his desk, the repeal of SAB 121, which is crazy because the House and the Senate are the ones supposed to be making the regulations of the laws, right? Not some shadowy swamp creatures like Gary Gensler in the background creating rules, not actually following their own regulations and comment periods and putting this stuff out. So we're going to see you've got a very stark difference here between these two candidacies as we head closer to election time. It's very clear that whatever you think about Donald Trump, he is definitely the better option here than this current Biden administration. And action speaks louder than words, right? So we're seeing all of this play out. You've seen the evolution of Trump going from a more of a critic to, oh, I can launch NFT collections. Oh, I can make money doing this. Oh, there's an industry here. He's taking the free market side of things, which is nice to see. And he may not fully understand, but he does have people like Vivek Ramaswamy in his ear talking to him. And aside from RFK Jr., there really is no other candidate at this point between him and Biden. I mean, who's the obvious choice is very obvious. It's Trump. It's not like he's full all in like crypto. He's just taking the reasonable position that, hey, I'm going to participate in this. Hey, it's kind of cool. I can make money. I can do this. I can have an NFT collection. I can get people to come invest and be a part of this and come talk to me. And you can kind of see the value of that access there actually, right? So a lot of people talk about NFTs. There's no real value there, but the value is if you bought that NFT, you have access to a president of the United States and you have a chance to go to his residence and talk to him and hang out at his country club, whatever it may be. But that is the economic value there. That is the value of owning that NFT. You're getting a membership in an exclusive gathering and an exclusive thing, right? So not to go down the rabbit hole too far, but you see a tale of two cities. We've got two totally separate ideologies here forming. At the end of the day, when Trump said, if you like crypto, vote for me, I think, it's more of just the embrace of this idea of a free market. He sees the potential for jobs. He sees what's happening right now, what this current administration has done, pushing all these jobs and, really trying to attack the industry in all these roundabout ways, whether it be SAB 121 or whether it be this Marty Gruenberg clown in the CFTC doing choke point to not the CFTC, I think he's the OTC or some other swamp agency. They've got a rampant sexual harassment going on. And of course, you've got Elizabeth Warren defending this clown. I mean, this is unbelievable. There's like hundreds of documented reports of this literal harasser with his whole administration that's in there harassing women, doing all sorts of crazy things. And she's basically defending this clown. And this guy's behind the scenes unconstitutionally going after crypto companies. I mean, the whole thing is disgusting. Let's go to another article here. So I love this. This is the mainstream media, MSN.com. Marjorie Taylor Greene ally Thomas Massie introduces End the Fed bill to abolish the U.S. central bank. Americans are suffering under crippling inflation, quoting the thing. Don't you just love the framing they use here? What the fuck does Marjorie Taylor Greene have anything to do with Thomas Massie introducing this End the Fed bill, right? They're basically using someone who's kind of a little radical, who has a bad reputation, who they want to really attack and throw out there, and take somebody with a reasonable position and, associate that person with Marjorie Taylor Greene when she has absolutely nothing to do with this at all, to frame the article to make you think this is a ridiculous proposition by Thomas Massie, right? This is how subtle that the media is. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So if you look here, we're going to just take a look at what he wrote. I mean, it's very simple. I just introduced End the Fed, title Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act. Americans would be better off if the Federal Reserve did not exist. The Fed devalues our currency by monetizing the debt, causing inflation. I mean, this is, very obvious, despite what all these cantillionaires and people will tell you. We are observing this happening. The result of printing trillions of dollars, throwing them out there. I mean, you can see that the record high 50 level inflation from that action. It's just very obvious, right? So does the Fed do more harm than good? I'm of the opinion that they do, honestly. I think that like with anything else, the free market decides, and the biggest asset in the whole market is money, right? Money is this good. Why should that be socialized and communistically controlled by a group of 12 people in a room when every other free market asset is sort of floats in the free market, right? Money should have to do the same thing. So let's move along. Next up, Binance Exec Tigran Gambaryan denied bail by the Nigerian court. The Nigerian court also ruled that the Binance exchange can be served the fierce tax evasion charges through its executive Tigran Gambaryan. this American hero who literally helped take down a pedophile ring by using Bitcoin. He traced transactions on the Bitcoin network. They literally used the blockchain, the public decentralized open source ledger, the Bitcoin blockchain, to track these cyber criminals and find these pedophiles. And this was probably one of the biggest pedophile busts in the history of the world. And they were able to do this by using Bitcoin's open, public, transparent blockchain. So this guy is literally a hero, and we haven't heard a word about this. This is essentially a shakedown of the Nigerian government by the Nigerian government. An extortion attempt on Binance for the fact that they are offering that they basically allow people to transact and escape the e-Naira, which is a currency that the government in Nigeria has been hyperinflating. The Naira has failed. It's been constantly hyperinflating, and people are losing their purchasing power. People can't live. They can't survive. They can't buy their groceries because the government keeps printing this money and basically stealing money from the population. So it's normal that people don't want to put up with that bullshit anymore. People want an alternative, right? So Binance just existing and being an option for people to exchange and hold their life's energy that they work hard for in a different currency that can't be debased by terrible government policy. They're going to shake down this American hero, and America's not going to do anything about this. I mean, this is unacceptable. This guy is a freaking hero, and he served the United States. They should absolutely demand that he is released immediately. I mean, the fact that this is still going on is unfathomable. Coinbase targets $600 billion overseas opportunity for crypto. With Australia potentially approving Bitcoin ETFs this year, more investors are looking for crypto exposure in their retirement plans. The largest crypto exchange in the United States, Coinbase is eyeing an opportunity in Australia's $600 billion self-run retirement industry, a surprisingly lucrative area for the growth of digital assets. So the reason I wanted to highlight this article is just kind of to show the opportunity and the money and the activity and everything that's happening all around the world in this industry, especially the fact that the United States has been more antagonistic than not. There's a lot of opportunities and things presenting themselves all over the world, right? Coinbase is expanding operations in other countries when they could be hiring developers and expanding more here in America, right? So, but it also highlights the fact that pension funds are going to hold Bitcoin ETFs. They are going to hold Bitcoin, all sorts of funds. I think I saw Morgan Stanley the other day is now adding Bitcoin ETF exposure. I mean, this is something that's just going to ramp up, and as more and more institutions are greenlit for to custody this asset and to hold these ETFs and to invest in these products. I mean, this is just for diversification purposes alone going to be a continuing buying pressure on this underlying asset, of which there are only 21 million Bitcoin, right? So do the math on that. And, if you look at the past 15 years of Bitcoin's price history as the best performing asset in all of human history, I think that this is just inevitable, right? You're going to see that more buy pressure, and the price only goes one way, right? When there's more demand and the supply is constrained, I mean, price goes up, right? And we've seen that baked into the fundamentals of the asset for the past 1 to 2 decades. Next up, Changpeng Zhao, CZ, teases writing project ahead of reporting to prison. They sentenced CZ to go to prison for 4 months, which was considered a pretty light. They wanted to put him in jail for years. The guy turned himself over, did everything he was supposed to do. This whole thing comes down to the fact that he didn't have anti-KYC, super stringent anti-KYC AML policies at Binance. Really, this guy has literally created tens of thousands of jobs. He's created trillions of dollars of economic value. He's done more for the world than most people ever will. This guy has allowed, tons of nations and people to escape crippling inflation, massive currency devaluation, be able to purchase and use stable coins through the Binance platform. So the fact that they're putting him in jail for this, I think, is just ridiculous. I mean, he's a good guy. This whole thing is absurd. This guy should not be in jail for this. He paid $1 billion of fines. I mean, what did he really do? Every transaction and everything that occurs in the world, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. The blame should fall on those people, right? We don't want to throw out everybody's rights to privacy, everyone's freedom and human rights, right? Just to try to catch the occasional bad guy, right? The rights of everybody should be preserved first. It might make their job harder, right? But you know what? That's the price we pay for freedom. So I think that, I don't think he should be in prison at all. I think this is ridiculous. That's, of course, my personal opinion, right? The guy paid $4.3 billion, as a penalty, right? So, he's either way, it is what it is. Let's move along. Another attack on freedom of speech and code. The Tornado Cash founder sent to prison. DeFi's EU struggles. Finance redefined. So here, it looks like in the Netherlands, they've convicted the Tornado Cash dev for money laundering, and they are putting him in prison for a couple of years, which I also think is absolutely ridiculous. So, again, this is a very chilling thing for open source developers and especially for people in the Netherlands, right? So be concerned, be scared. Freedom of speech is not something that they prioritize there, apparently. Let's move along to our X Factor takes. Paul Grewal. 60 yes votes, a bipartisan supermajority, and a resounding rebuke of SEC Gov's overreach and disdain for federal administrative law. The message from Congress is clear. Enough is enough. So Congress is here voting to repeal SAB 121, is the first of many legislative victories for crypto in the U.S. So I love how this. Excited for President Biden to sign it into law. Good luck, buddy. I don't think he's going to sign it into law because he's already claimed that he's going to veto it. So, someone said it would be gross to see a veto here. One large step for based kind. All right, let's move along to the next. Our next take here. So Ryan Selkis, President Trump takes one photo with a crypto entrepreneur, shakes a couple of hands, has dinner. Democrats scramble for cover. Politico, whoa, Democrats saved crypto. The media and their bias and their framing. But here is Ryan meeting with President Trump at this NFT event for his collection. And, it was kind of cool. You get to have access to the president, the former president of the United States and potentially a future president. And you get to be in his ear and talk to him about crypto and talk to him about policy. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And using Web3 tech, using NFT technology, right? That non-fungible token that you have that represents a opportunity to meet the president and have special access. Very cool. And then you look here at the media. Here's Jasper Goodman and Eleanor Mueller. Here's what they put out. I wanted to send a message. Democrats break with Warren Biden on crypto. A sudden Capitol Hill momentum boost for the digital currency industry has come from a surprising source, Democrats. So don't get me wrong. I am super pro the fact that many Democrats crossed the aisle to help on this issue and to vote with their conscience, right? Vote with freedom and vote with the future of the United States in mind. So that is a good thing and that should be praised. But it's very clear that this has become a polarized issue between the two sides of the aisle. I mean, this is inevitable and it's been in the coming for a long time. And, it's sad that it has to be that way, but this is where we're at right now, right? The majority of Republicans support crypto and Web3 and technology, and the majority of the Democratic Party do not. They do not like the freedom, this idea that you can transact freely, that you don't have to rely on third parties to move money and do things. And they want to police and monitor everything you do. They want to make sure everything is, they have control, right? It's really a matter of control and authoritarianship. Bitcoin Magazine. U.S. senators are debating whether their state is the best in the country for Bitcoin. You are not bullish enough. So this is Cynthia Lummis replying to Ted Cruz, where he says, Senator Ted Cruz on Bitcoin relationships across state lines. I wanted Texas to be the oasis for crypto and Bitcoin mining, but right now we have some competition on that from Florida. I love Florida. And then I also love Wyoming. Own properties in both places and absolutely would not own properties in other places that are not red states, personally, because of taxation and destruction of my personal wealth that would occur there. Property taxes in places like New York are like exponentially higher. I was looking at a property there at one point a couple years back, and I said the tax for the year, and the lady looked at me, and the realtor said, "Oh, that's not the tax for the year. That's the tax for the month." I said, "That's what I pay in an entire year in Florida. So that's not. I'm not buying any property here." Absurd. Different senators want to compete to be the state for innovation, right? They want this activity. They want this business. They want these new wave of entrepreneurs and companies setting up shop in their state. And it's very apparent that these are red states. Jack Mallers. Money is our time and energy in an abstracted form. When it's devalued, so are we. What changed in 1971? Declines in family, housing, and overall quality of life. Is it because life demands more from those using fiat currency? Printing money is an affront to human dignity. Probably my favorite post that I've seen in the past week. I think these charts just tell it all. Many people know what actually happened in 1971. Well, the US dollar was totally detached from the gold standard, and governments are now unconstrained to print money and steal from people. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? There's many charts. If you go to WTFhappenedin1971.com, you can very clearly see the explosion of the fiat world, the fiat consequences to society, and what happens on a fiat standard. The US dollar has existed in this fiat form for about 50 years now, and that data is apparent to see. The wealth inequality gaps, all of these things can be attributed to the destruction of people's savings and purchasing power, and that is very clearly on display. Next up, Caitlin Long. Here's another example of Operation Choke Point 2.0 by Harsha Goli. Here's a Lightning Lightning contributor, someone who's an ex-engineer working on Bitcoin. This Huntington Bank, I mean, this boycott these banks guy. Somebody requested a loan, and they said here that unable to grant credit requests because income derived from prohibited industry. Prohibited industry? Is this even legal? I mean, what is this? A prohibited? This is not an illegal industry. I mean, this is we still live in America, and these bank regulators and these people behind the scenes that are not elected, these swamp creatures, they get to decide what is a prohibited industry. They can discriminate against people that are operating in completely legal industries. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that the Constitution protects against that. So hopefully there's some legal action taken on this front. But this type of behavior from Marty Gruenberg's. And that's the clown, the sexual harasser who has been now accused of sexually running an administration. Let's look this clown up real quick. Let's just dive in. This is the guy behind most of this stuff. Marty Gruenberg, sexual harasser. Let's see what's going on here. Let's see what I'm reading here. The FDIC here. This is the FDIC boss. There's so many things about it here, but let's just click one, right? Grilled after her. Oh, you can't even read it because it's behind a paywall. Everything's behind a paywall now, right? FDIC inquiry finds pervasive sexual harassment. The response to allegations of conduct has been insufficient, the report found, detailing incidents in which senior executives pursued romantic relationships with subordinates. If you really want to go deeper on this, you should listen to the Castle Island Ventures podcast with Nick Carter. He really went deep on this. I mean, I think there was something like 500 to 1,000 separate complaints from women and people that were a part of the FDIC here. And this is the chief guy in charge of this whole thing, this Marty Gruenberg character. Here he is. Oh yeah, he wants to express how sorry he is. Sure he is. While he, runs Choke Point 2.0 behind the scenes after he was currently in the Obama administration and they lost in court while they did this to other industries. Now he's back in action doing this again behind the scenes, right? So the Federal Deposit Insurance Corp fostered a workplace rife with sexual harassment, discrimination, bullying, and other misconduct for years that management did little to stop, according to the findings of an independent investigation. The report released Tuesday by law firm Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen, and Hamilton said the top bank regulator needs cultural and structural change and questioned whether FDIC Chair Marty Gruenberg is the right person to lead those reforms, citing instances of him losing his temper and interacting with staff in a demeaning and inappropriate manner. Again, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you at the top. And this is a government agency, a government-run entity. This should not be happening. His unethical behavior is apparent to see with all of the unconstitutional things currently happening with him at the helm, right? So this is one of the architects of Choke Point 2.0 in the current Biden administration. Next up, Dennis Porter. I have had multiple Washington, D.C. staffers tell me that the passage of the Bitcoin rights bill in Oklahoma is already providing momentum for policy action at the federal level. One major reason state policy action is so important is we can influence federal policy outcomes. So very interesting here. If we dive into his tweet, he has a subtweet underneath it, and I think this is telling. So he goes, Bitcoin is not the first issue to use this strategy. Some examples, cannabis, gay marriage, women's suffrage, and there is more. Now that self-custody is a right in Oklahoma, it is much more likely it becomes a federal law. There are studies to back up this claim. Next time someone doubts the potential of the state work, remind them that the laboratory of democracy is alive and well, and they would be better off championing these results instead of trying to shoot them down. We all benefit from Bitcoin policy wins at the state level. So couldn't agree more here. Dennis, keep up what you're doing. Keep up the good work. Love to see it. I'm going to give you a repost on all of this. Let's move on. Carrie Lake. Crypto is one of Arizona's fastest growing economic sectors. As cryptocurrency investing becomes more mainstream and faces increasing regulatory pressure, it's essential that the people you elect stand up for this critical, rapidly expanding industry. As I posted here, I freaking love this. It's nice to see more politicians and people, whether that be Democrat or Republican, show up to back, just common sense stuff, right? Technology, innovation companies, and this an entire industry that's forming here. Bitcoin news. I highlighted this one because I thought it was kind of Orwellian, right? So here's Gemini, another crypto exchange. Gemini is asking users to explain their activity for simply buying Bitcoin and withdrawing it, right? So Gemini prides itself on being this whole regulated New York, Bitcoin company, crypto company. And, Cameron and Tyler have done a lot for the industry. They were involved very early on. They were sort of abused by Mark Zuckerberg. If you really look into what all happened there, he was doing all sorts of unethical things and kind of fucked him over behind the scenes. But at least they made away with some stock in Facebook initially. But then they went and they found Bitcoin and they bought tons of Bitcoin, and they were very early entrepreneurs that were involved in the space. I read, I think it was a book written by Ben Mesrick, I believe, was pretty good, about 12 years ago, right, when everything was first getting off the ground. And it was very interesting stuff to read and learn about. So thank you for those contributions. But here we are today, and somebody posted the screenshot that was sent. Hi there. A review of your recent account activity showed regular deposits of fiat and a one-way trading pattern where you deposit funds, convert it to digital currency, and then withdraw. Can you please explain the following? Describe the purpose of your recent transfers. Identify how you are currently storing your cryptocurrency assets. Describe the source of funds. This is nobody's fucking business. And the fact that this kind of behavior is normalized is ridiculous. This should be exposed and it should be criticized and ridiculed, because it's not their fucking business what people do with their money and their assets, right? It really isn't. So you're paying them a fee for the service, and they should not be interrogating you for what you're doing with your assets. We should start pushing back on this, whether it be a bank, right? I go into a bank and I withdraw some money. They say, "Why are you withdrawing your money?" Well, because it's my fucking money. That's why. The fact that you should be ashamed for asking me what I'm doing with my money when it's none of your damn business. You go to the restaurant and you swipe your debit card to pay for dinner, and the waitress comes up to you and says, how much money's in your bank account? Where'd you get the money that you're using to buy your food? I mean, it's just absurd, right? Absolutely absurd. Gemini is committed to providing a safe and secure platform for its customers, and your answer to the above questions will support us in that mission. I don't know how that is any of their damn business. It has anything to do with their mission. We appreciate your interest in Gemini, and thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Onward and upward. Yes, I agree, onward and upward, but this is unacceptable behavior, Gemini. Please go talk to your team, figure this out, but this is unacceptable, and nobody should be participating in this. And, it's sad that these types of questions and things are even acceptable in a free society. If you look at the Constitution, this is completely unacceptable behavior by the government. And I'm sure there's some governmental policy, some stuff happening in the background trying to enforce this. But if so, Gemini, come out and expose those conversations. Let's see the public, again, these are public officials and public people that are servants of the public, right? So there should be no secrecy there. That should be public, right? What are they saying? Why are you doing this? And this is silly. It really is. And it's disgusting. Here is one of my favorite Tech Watch project. This is Dr. Robert Epstein's foundation, and they sort of expose all of these different insidious things that big tech does behind the scenes. We know we've talked about some of this before, and I actually have a whole thing pinned on it in my Twitter profile. I just want to make people aware of kind of the manipulation and the brainwashing that's happening with all of this media that everybody constantly consumes, right? Nobody has any idea how your brain is being hijacked by these tech companies, and how honestly evil they are, and what they're actually doing to sway public opinion and to manipulate you behind the scenes. Big tech controls unsuspecting users by sending subliminal messages. As we enter a search, bias for elections, bias for consumption, never-ending bias. Dr. Epstein examines how our search engine rankings influence us. And you can actually go look at his published research. I mean, it is very interesting and very profound. So if you go here, you can see some of that. He posts it here in his American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. So you can look at the search suggestion effect, the search engine manipulation effect, the answer bot effect, all of these different things. And you can take a peek at it and kind of look at his research. Let's move on. Paul Grewal. In a brief, and this happened, I think, about 4 or 5 days ago, to avoid dismissal of its case against Debtbox with prejudice, the SEC Gov includes a remarkable admission that it did not follow its own typical Wells process when it refused to tell us what assets would be charged as securities. The Wells process is designed to aid the charging decision for a specific potential defendant. The SEC staff typically provides a thorough explanation of the evidence it would use to prove potential charges against a particular person or entity. We received no thorough explanation of the evidence of what assets supposedly gave rise to securities transactions. We weren't told what assets were at issue at all. Why would the government not follow its typical process in our case? What does that say about its claims? The answer to this question is the fact that they are not following the law. They are not. They are just trying to use executive power to go after an entire industry. They are abusing their power, and it's very authoritarian. And they don't even care if they win these cases. They're just trying to waste time and cause as much chaos as they possibly can on their way out the door. We've got to the SEC head chief Gary Gensler on record multiple times saying the complete opposite of things he said only a year or two ago when he was teaching at MIT. I mean, the hypocrisy is unfathomable. But then we have him on, actually can't even tell you whether Ethereum is a security, right? The second largest crypto asset. He just dodges the questions, goes to his congressional hearing, and he can't even tell you whether that's a security. So, I mean, I think they want to live in this world where there's this ambiguity, and they want to try to just use it to attack the industry. Instead of, fostering and following their mission of fair and efficient markets, they want to attack the industry and cause the opposite. They want to cause chaos with whether it be SAB 121, all these crazy lawsuits and attacks against good players, attacking American innovation and forcing jobs overseas. I mean, the whole thing is just reeks. It's just disgusting. Maddie Rowley, exclusive. These taxpayer-funded groups are pulling in billions of dollars and lavishing themselves with salaries and bonuses. Here's how they're cashing in. So, Endeavors Inc. was awarded $1.3 billion grants. I mean, the fact that this is occurring and the burden on the American taxpayer is unfathomable. That bringing in, all of these migrants and they're flying them in, and taxpayers are footing the bill. I mean, the thing is, it's unbelievable that this is happening. This should be treason. At the end of the day, taxpayers are actually paying for this, right? All this money is being laundered to these NGOs to do all this nonsense. They're getting, these crazy salaries and all this stuff. You cannot even make this up, what's actually happening here. And the reason that I'm highlighting it is because it's peak fiat. This is only possible when there's no transparency, and they can hide this behavior for months, right? And years even, right? Nobody really knows, right? The right side of the aisle might not want to hear that, But the military, right? They so much money is going there. Where is this money going? What's happening? The books never balance. You can never audit and find out. And the same thing here, right? I mean, where is all this money? This is public funds. All of this should be completely transparent. If you look into some of these things, there's, $50,000 for a hot dog, $70,000 for a towel rack. I mean, where did that money really go? I mean, what's going on here, right? So, the population should be able to see, and I think RFK Jr. was the one who recommended this. Let's put all this government activity, all these expenditures, all this money, let's put it on a public blockchain and let society be able to dig through all of that and see where public money is being spent, right? Again, as my favorite quote is, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I think that's why I love blockchain so much, right? Because everything is technically public, right? You've got a public blockchain and you can look at everything, but you still have privacy and some level of anonymity, right? So if you were a mother of 3 children and you're trying to take your measly life's energy, whatever it may be to you, it's important to you, and you're trying to flee a country or whatever, you can be anonymous and take that currency and have the private key and take your funds away from a war-torn area or a country that's hyperinflated or an authoritarian regime, whatever that may be. Well, at the same time, you've got a public blockchain where investigators can track down actual criminals. And so it's really this idea of it's the best of both worlds, right? It enhances freedom, and the majority of society who are just doing the right thing are just going to be able to have that level of privacy. But the criminals can also be tracked, right? When you have high value transactions that are criminal and there's investigators, it might not be easy, but if we look at who we spoke about earlier, Tigran, who is now suffering in Nigeria, he was responsible for some of the biggest pedophilia busts in the history of humanity, right? So, and he did that because they were able to use the blockchain to trace these criminals, right? So that's fascinating to me. I love that. But in a fiat world, this is the type of behavior that's possible. And nobody knows about it for months or years. It takes people like James O'Keefe, brave journalists like that, who literally go undercover and interview these people and pretend they're other people and get them to expose and spill all the beans, right? Or Maddie Rowley here, who's a investigative journalist with a Proton email, right? She's exposing this and putting this all here. Here's the CEOs. Here's all these people. Here's the data. What is this? Michelle Obama is a global refugee CEO. Krish Omara, is a policy director for First Lady Michelle Obama. Saw her compensation increase from $240,000. So I mean, this is just like taxpayer money going to fund this invasion of the country that's occurring right now. Just wild. Daniel Batten here. Greece now has too much solar energy and must take them off grid during the day to keep the power supply stable and avoid power outages. By not having Bitcoin mining, Greece is wasting energy and revenue that could lower residential pricing, right? So you have all this green energy and it's produced at a time when, not everybody's home, or when the sun's shining, everyone's at work, so nobody can use the energy, right? Well, what happens to that energy if you don't have a place to store it, right? Battery technology isn't quite there yet, or it's not a complete solution for this level of energy. Instead, it actually will probably cost you money because you just have to waste that energy, right? You have to just either vent it into the ground or put it somewhere where you have to pay people to pay people even to use it, right? So instead of doing that, right, what would make sense would be Bitcoin mining, right? Utilize Bitcoin mining to capitalize on that energy, pass along those savings for all these green energy projects, allow them to ROI faster, and that benefit of a lower rate and more profitability for your energy company can be passed on to the residential customers, right? It's a win-win for everybody. In no European country is solar energy booming as much as in Greece. However, too much electricity can also pose a real threat to the networks. Therefore, the government is now taking a radical step. DS Batten. Be good to see an analysis comparing the cost, speed, and economic return of ramping up battery storage, ramping up Bitcoin mining, size both to, and this was, I thought, was the best post on this thread, and we're going to go into it a little bit. Be good to see an analysis comparing the cost, speed, and economic return of A, ramping up battery storage, and B, ramping up Bitcoin mining. Size both the capacity needed to soak up excess solar production and compare results. How much would it cost? How fast would you build it? How much money would it generate annually? So here is the answer from Daniel Batten, which I think is very interesting. So ARK Invest, which is Cathie Wood's funds, you can see here they've done the research. Summary: a combination of both battery and Bitcoin mining works best. Battery by itself can only soak up 4 hours of spare energy and might release it back to the grid when prices are still low. Bitcoin mining by itself can only consume and load balance, but not store energy. So here's the link to the research if you guys want to check it out. Pretty fascinating, I think. This is Bitcoin mining powered snow melt system. What you see is one hydronic loop. There are 5 total when the project is complete. It will also include the deck in the background. There is no dry cooler, only geothermal and geocrypto, although one of the loops will have some air exposure. This is something that could even be deployed at scale for cities who spend tons of money every year on frozen roads or frozen, whether it be salt, whether it be plowing, whether it be all that stuff. Imagine if they installed these loops and the city had a Bitcoin facility or literally just gave a facility to a Bitcoin mining company, right? This is just an example of the tip of the iceberg of innovations that could save money, save time, make things safer, and pass on costs to consumers, right? So just wanted to kind of take a look at that. Very cool, right? So what essentially will happen is water will run through the Bitcoin miners, or they will be in a immersion loop that has water to cool it, and that hot water will go through these pipes into the ground and essentially heat up the pavement when it's freezing outside, essentially, and melt the snow. How cool is that? I think it's freaking awesome. And this is how it looks at the end, right? So nobody will even know what's underneath, but they'll have those tubes in the concrete, and those tubes will have water circulating through them, hot water that will melt snow or whatever might appear on top of this pavement. So at scale, this is even cooler, especially if you did this. They should run some tests on some cities and do this in where there's tons of snow and there might be, really hard to plow or do stuff because of how cold it is. I think this would be a really cool offset, really cool, innovative synergy that could be explored more, right? So that's all I got for you guys today. Stay safe, stay blessed, never stop learning, and keep an open mind. Thanks for listening.